Ever feel like running away? Like right now? Do you feel protected from the coronavirus where you're at right now at home? There's a lot of fears and talk about protection. I'd like to talk to you about that today. Hi, I'm Pastor David. I'm with Marshall First Assembly. First of all, I want you to know we're praying for you. Most of you that received this notice and received this notice that we'd be online are watching because you're familiar with us and we've had some contact with you. And we want to pray for you. We want to provide for you. We want to do and be there as a church, however we can be. And I wanted to share a really quick message with you today. This has been hard for me to do because this is the shortest message that I have ever prepared. In Luke chapter 15, there's a parable. It's a story that Jesus told to illustrate a spiritual principle, and a principle that's valid today as well. Luke 15:11, it says, Jesus continued, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to the father, Father, give me your share of the estate. Wow, this was an insult. He was asking his father, it was like he was as good as dead, and that to give me all the money that I have coming, I want to cash out, I want to cash in, I want that money, and I don't care if you live or not, is basically what he was saying to him. The father, we don't know why, but he chose to give the money freely to the young man. He gives it to the youngest son without any rules, it was the youngest son's decision. It was his money. It had been given to him. He could do with it whatever he wanted to. But he chose foolishly, and there were consequences. The first thing I want you to realize is when you leave home, you are running away from the love of home. You see, when we leave God's presence, you don't realize it. It is a consequence until much later. Why is it a consequence? Because you are running away from the safety of home. When you run from God, you take yourself out from underneath that safety or that protection. This is important to understand. It's not that God chooses to quit protecting you. Instead, you choose to refuse his protection. That doesn't mean he might not protect you anyway. It doesn't mean that he won't do some things to drive you back home so that you'll come back to him. When you leave home and you're running away, you also leave the security of home. You're running away from the safety of home, the security of home, and the blessings of home. Let me illustrate blessings for just a moment. When I was growing up, when I got to be about 4 to 6 years old, I remember I could go into the kitchen and I could climb up on the cabinet all by myself and I could make myself a bowl of cereal. I would get the bowl down, I would open the refrigerator, get the milk out, and pour, not always so well, but I would pour the milk and I would make my bowl of cereal and I would have a snack whenever I wanted. That was mine to do because I lived in the family. It was my blessing that I received. Same with God. God has blessings for you and I as we live in his home, as we live with him, as we choose to follow him, make him the Lord of our life. He has blessings in store for us, and we can ask him. Matter of fact, his word says in Matthew that we're to ask, we're supposed to seek, and we're to knock. We're supposed to ask and keep asking, seek and keep seeking. So we ask for protection from this coronavirus. And we seek that protection. And we keep doing it. We keep knocking. We keep coming back to him. And he's there with us within our home. What keeps some of you from asking for that and seeking for that is because you know that you haven't been doing what you're supposed to have been doing. You know that you have not been in the home or been quite a long time since you came and visited. I'm not talking just about church. I'm talking about that healthy relationship with Jesus. So you'd feel like, oh, I can't do that now. God's not going to do this for me. It affects your confidence. It affects your faith. But don't get me wrong. God still loves you. You're just not there to experience that love if you're not still in that home. Let me ask you a question. Who would want to live without safety, security, and blessings and love in their home? I don't think anybody would, do you? The story continues in verse 13. Not long after the younger son got together everything that he had, he set off for a distant country. And there he squandered his wealth in wild living. After he spent everything, not long after that, the younger son got together. After he spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. It's amazing that they had a famine. There was something that came into this person's life to kind of drive them back home, to make them think, you might say, to make them homesick. When you run from God, your plans will eventually fail. It doesn't work to run from the Lord. You maybe have thought, I'd never thought America would get this way. I never thought we'd be facing this situation that we're facing today. I never thought I would be broke in this situation. My plan isn't providing that. I've never been so lonely before. I didn't plan on it this way. This is a surprise to me. I need the Lord. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. No one gave him one single thing. When he came to his senses, this is what God was doing. When he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired men have food to spare? And here I am starving to death. I know what I'll do." I put that part in. "I will set out and I'll go back to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned. I've sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired men." So he got up and he went to his father. He was under this guilt. He didn't think that he was worthy any longer. But his father had something special for him. What he didn't realize as he was making this long trip home, that his father was waiting for him. That his father had been out on that porch often, watching and looking for when he would be arriving. And it says, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. And he ran to his son. He threw his arms around him and he kissed him. And he accepted him back in the family. Maybe you're here today. God, this message has not arrived to you by accident. Maybe you need to turn back to the Lord today. We want to help you. You can simply pray. You can pray right now. You can pray and ask Jesus to come into your life and choose to follow him. And he's faithful to be there with you, and he's there ready that you can come back into that fellowship, come back into that home. Maybe this is the first time that you would be doing that. Maybe you need some help and you'd like for us to pray with you. Simply comment on these private messages, whatever you'd like to do. You can reach us at the church, 660-886-5313. That's 660-886-5313. God bless you. We're praying for you. Let us know what you need.